check out ESPN Film's newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
We welcome you to another week. Welcome to Monday, and what a week this should be. Thanks for being a part of the program, and we're swimming our way through the month of August, and glad you are alongside of us. Let's get right to it. A lot of news to share with you. Houston Nutt. Has that nut been cracked? Well, he says he would settle the lawsuit against Ole Miss, the one that helped to bring Hugh Freeze down, for an apology. This is something that probably could have happened a long time ago. There's also some other stipulations, such as a donation to set up a fund for better ethics involving sports, but we'll tell you more about that later on. But that's the news out of Mississippi. Alabama, not ruling out roles for each of the five running backs. Let's introduce you to the best and the brightest. You know about Harris, Bo Scarborough. What if Bo had not been injured? Have you heard that before? Josh Jacobs got some reps. Brian Robinson Jr. is a newcomer. And what about Najee Harris, one of the highest-ranked running backs in the history of the University of Alabama? That's pretty much Heisman U. So Nick Saban and Brian Dable trying to find spots for all of those young men. Meanwhile, this was in USA Today earlier. Great article. We have one of the people quoted in there. College football's grip in the South grows stronger than ever. Coaches compared to Confederate generals. I think you get the idea. Football's pretty important down in the South. Well, welcome to the program as we continue here on this August 7th. What do we have on tap today? Tom Luginbill. We have not seen him in a while. Glad to welcome Lugs back to the show. He'll give us his take on the league. And Brent Swerneman covers the Aggies. Talk about the quarterback competition and the future of you-know-who, and Jim Sturk. He is relatively new as the athletic director at Mizzou, and he's doing quite a good job, according to almost everyone. Pat Forty on the latest from Oxford. He has been one of the leaders in covering that story for Yahoo. And Charles Wilson, the former professor, retired professor from Ole Miss. He is now the editor of the New Encyclopedia of Southern Culture, where I'm sure this program is mentioned, or if it's not, it should be. But first, your phone calls at 855-242-7285. 855-242-7285. A reminder, a week from next Wednesday, I should say, which will be next Wednesday, we'll debut an hour earlier, not on the SEC network or on the radio station or channel that you're currently listening to or watching, but on ESPN2. So make sure you mark that. If 4 hours and 20 hours a week of Finebaum is simply not enough for you, then we're going to give you a little more to chew on during the college football season. Let's get to the calls. Ron is in California. Ron, how are you doing, my man? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Before I get into anything, just wondering about the new hour at ESPN2.
Yes.
Will you have that on podcast also?
I suspect we will, yeah. I mean, let me it's still the Finebaum show. It's not like we're going to be doing dog tricks and having dancing bears. It will just be on ESPN2, which is, just like this channel, a national channel. But we will probably deal with a broader conversation of college football than we currently do. But it's not like we don't talk about college football here. So
I was just wondering. I'm a big podcast listener, so yes, sir.
Anything good on that show will be on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm calling in because I'm excited. The pads are starting to come on soon, hopefully this week for a lot of college teams. And as a big Florida Gator fan, I'm really excited about this Michigan game, Paul, because I'm originally from Chicago and I lived in Michigan. So I've been around the Ohio State and Michigan fan base all my life, and they've been talking trash to me since I was a little kid before Charles Woodson came around. So I'm ready for this game, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for the speed that we have coming in on offense. I think McElwain has a lot of speed, and this year, without any tape, I think you can't really look at our tape from the last 2 years with Trayon Harris and Luke Del Rio and, Austin Appleby. I think you're going to have to throw that tape out the window with this offense. I think it's going to look totally different, and if we get the momentum going, first game on tracks, if you're putting Florida speed on basically turf in Dallas, I like our chances against a Big Ten team this year, and I'm hoping we put it on them. And I'm thinking right now with the momentum, the only problem I have is the interior defensive line. If we get any injuries, we're really thin and experienced there. So that's my biggest issue. But other than that, I think we're a superior team, and you've been on it. We were 7-point underdogs back in April, but now we're even. So I think Vegas is catching up. I think everyone's catching up there. Michigan has only 5 returning starters. They're going to have to put a lot of pressure on primetime games.
Ron, you've done a good job of breaking it down, better than I could. And I don't get Michigan. I mean, if you put Brady Hoke as the coach at Michigan as opposed to Jim Harbaugh, I don't even think it's a fair fight. But Harbaugh has a way of garnering a lot of attention, which he deserves. He's a very good coach. But to me, this game is all Gators.
It helps us because if we win this game and Tennessee wins out, we're able to beat Tennessee, and we start 4-0. We go into an October with Texas A&M LSU games. If we're 4-0 by then, those could be night games in the swamp. And then we have a week off, and then we play Georgia and Jacksonville. It's like this is a big momentum factor for us as a program. It's like this can help usher us into a really good positive season where when we're in November, anything can happen, and Florida Gators can be a name that's like, hey, look at them. Alabama's still the top dog, but, I feel like we could make big noise in the SEC this fall.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Listen, always good to hear from you. We go from the West Coast to the East Coast, Oakland to Boston. Mark is up next in Newton, Mass. What do you say, Mark?
Hi. I was just going to say that the previous caller, I personally like Georgia's chances in the East better, and I think the SEC wants Georgia to do better because if Georgia wins the East, they will most likely have, they'll maybe have I see a way where they have no losses going into the SEC championship game. Then they get murdered by Alabama, and then the SEC can go around saying, oh, Georgia deserves to be in the Final Four because there's going to be other one-loss teams in the nation. And I think, this isn't just what the SEC wants, but I think this is also what's going to happen. I think Georgia is a team that doesn't have to play Bama, so that's always going to help you. And they have a very favorable schedule that has some good competition in there, but it's still not too hard.
Well said, Mark. I do appreciate the call very much. Listen, we have a lot to do today, and I mentioned the guest list. We'll talk about the Aggies. We'll talk to the athletic director at the University of Missouri, Pat Forty, Dr. Charles Wilson. But when we come back, we'll welcome Tom Luginbill to our program. I don't know where Tom's been lately, but we have certainly missed him. He's in studio, so you won't be missing him anymore. Back with us, Tom Luginbill has been sitting here with us on television. Now you can hear him on radio. Tom, let's talk about quarterbacks, because you mentioned them briefly. Everyone thinks the SEC may not be great overall, but from a quarterback standpoint, it has definitely improved. How would you, looking at the quarterbacks, how do you file them down in terms of ranking them?
Well, my top two right now would be Nick Fitzgerald at Mississippi State, then Jake Bentley at South Carolina. I think those two are have an opportunity to really take the next step. I think Jake Bentley, seeing the field last year, took a 4-8 roster and got them bowl eligible as a true freshman. We all know what's taken place with Ole Miss in that program, but Ole Miss still has some pretty darn good offensive players, and Shea Patterson's one of them. I think there's a great improvement there. I'm still waiting to see the development of Jalen Hurts in the downfield passing game. I know it was a point of emphasis in spring football, but it's also been a point of emphasis for everybody on their upcoming schedule for this entire offseason is to study Jalen Hurts and force him into an uncomfortable area of his game. So how much has he improved? Because if he becomes the complete player, now I think he's in the discussion of the top 2 to 3 to 4 quarterbacks in the entire conference, but until that happens, he's going to be looked at more as an athlete and an improviser and a runner and a guy that's sufficient in the passing game, and that's got to be better than sufficient for Alabama to get to where they want to be on offense.
You've mentioned a couple of quarterbacks, and I'm sure Auburn fans are calling in and saying, well, what about Jarrett Stidham?
So I take a very, 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 very large grain of salt when I discuss Auburn's quarterbacks, because I think we've all been burned before. We've had high expectations for guys. Don't look any further than the Jeremy Johnson situation a few years ago. And listen, I'm somebody that has intimate knowledge of Jarrett Stidham. I invited him to the Under Armour game, spent a lot of time with him. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, but I still think he has to earn the job. If he earns the job outright throughout training camp, then are they going to be infinitely better offensively? Yeah, I think they are, because I think the kid is a really, really talented young man. But I also know that Sean White's not just going to hand over the reins. Right. And if you're going to really be fair about the quarterback situation at Auburn, and you look at last year, they had a run of about 5 to 6 weeks, Auburn did, where they were one of the hottest teams in college football on offense. And it was because of Sean White. It was because of Cam Petway. It was because of some of those young wideouts starting to emerge. So everybody around the quarterback position is going to be much better. Do I expect Jarrett Stidham to be the starting quarterback at Auburn? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to be handed to him, or that he's just going to run away and that the gap is so wide? I don't see that being the case, and I think a lot of people do.
There are a couple of places where they're actually competition. There's not many. Tennessee being one. Obviously, A&M, Florida, we're not sure. What are your thoughts on those just to start with?
I think Quentin Dormady will end up being the quarterback at Tennessee. I just think he has a little bit more nuance to the position. When I say that, Jarrett Guarantano is an extremely gifted player. He's also a one-speed fastball thrower, and part of his game is developing how to change things up a little bit, how to suit the throw to the route and lay the ball in there, some of those little things. You know, he may have developed that over the last 18 months. I think Quentin Dormady's a little ahead of the curve there, so I think he will take the leap for Tennessee offensively. Listen, there's quarterbacks top to bottom in this conference that are unknowns, including the quarterbacks at Florida, and I use Malik Zaire in that same conversation because to assume Malik Zaire is just going to come in and be the starting quarterback at Florida, I think is naive. I think it is completely false in relationship to what he brings talent-wise and what they ask of you in that offense. Do I think he'll play? Yes. Do I think they will use him as a runner to force defenses to have to prepare for an awful lot? I absolutely believe that will be the case. But I think Felipe Frank will likely be the quarterback going into the season for Florida. And if Florida emerges with a quarterback, Paul, I'm telling you right now, that is a college football playoff roster, top to bottom. Their roster, all the components that you look for, if a quarterback emerges, look out.
You talk about a lot of schools. We haven't mentioned Alabama. There isn't much dissent on Alabama. Some aren't convinced. You alluded to Hurts. What would concern you if I said you have to make the argument Alabama doesn't return to the college football playoff? Where would you lock your arms around?
Probably some faces and some names that the general public may not be overly familiar with, not materializing in the defensive front four. When you have some of the losses that they've had, you have some of the losses at linebacker. I just think that a guy like Raekwon Davis, all right, so we might be sitting here 10 weeks from now and talking about Raekwon Davis being the dominant player in the defensive front at Alabama. We also could be sitting here and finding a guy not emerge the way that they thought that he would. This is the first time, I think, that defensively, particularly within the front seven framework of Alabama, they might not be as plug and play as they've been in years past. I really think they're going to be exceptional offensively with their weapons and the maturity and some of the additions and the ability to reshuffle the offensive line. But there's going to have to be some guys step up and probably exceed an early expectation within their front. That would be my one concern if I had one with Alabama.
LSU has been projected very high. They certainly are not high on anyone's list for having a great quarterback. Is he good enough?
I think he's serviceable. My question is, if this hire of Matt Canada was made a year ago and you had the wideouts that played for LSU a year ago there, now we're having a different conversation. I don't know if this is so much about Danny Etling as it is about his trust in finding other options aside from DJ Chark. I think Drake Davis is an emerging star for them at receiver. People may not be familiar with him. I think he's going to be given every opportunity to be a go-to guy. But this offense is going to have a new look. You're going to see a lot of zone run game. You're going to see a lot of cutback stuff. You're going to see jet sweep. You're going to see end arounds, a lot of formations. I think their running back is not good. I think he's special. And defensively, keep this name in mind. Everybody's talking about the loss of Jamal Adams. They're going to have a safety in Grant Delpit that will be having, in my opinion, barring injury, the exact same type of draft status 3 years from now at safety. I don't see a huge drop-off for them on defense.
Tom, let me flip around the rest of the country briefly. The ACC has won 2 of the last 4 championships. They're projected with Florida State.
Sure.
Are you in on Florida State, or is Clemson or Miami emerging?
I still have concerns about Florida State and the offensive line. I think we all, if you've watched them or studied them, would acknowledge that. I really, truly believe people are discounting Clemson way too much. I think Clemson has earned the right and has proven that they aren't a flash in the pan. They aren't just you lose 2 or 3 of these guys and now we're going to take a dip down. Each and every year over the last 3 years, everybody kept talking about how they lost these guys on defense. And every year they were better. I've seen them. I think they're going to be better on defense this year than they were a year ago. Too much emphasis is being placed on the loss of Ben Boulware. I think they've got arguably the best 2-deep front 4 of anybody in college football. And if they happen to hit on 3 quarterbacks in a row, all right, so if you had Taj Boyd, then Deshaun Watson, if they hit on a third one, outside of the loss of Mike Williams, offensively, everybody's back. And I think Tavion Feaster is a budding star in that offense. So I saw the coaches poll come out last week. If I'm looking at the roster top to bottom, and I'm looking at where this team's at and the right I think that they've earned, I would have gone Alabama 1, Clemson 2 over Ohio State, over Florida State, over all of them.
Wow. Plenty of free meals ahead of you down the highway. Beyond the ACC, and certainly a strong statement, Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12, what do you think?
Big Ten, Wisconsin's schedule sets up for them to go 12-0 or 11-1 unless they just screw it up, because of who they don't play. It'd be very interesting, in my opinion, to see if Penn State is a sustained real deal, not just a team that was able to catapult that win versus Ohio State into something special. Let's hope it's for the better, because I think Penn State and college football is better when Penn State's good. Ohio State is probably the most ready-made team, in my opinion, for a college football playoff run, but I think they got real questions in the downfield passing game. Hopefully Kevin Wilson will be able to get that rectified. And, I would guard against the SC hype out of the Pac-12. I really would. I think the hype is completely grounded in one individual player, and that player is worthy of it. Is the rest of the roster capable? I still think Washington is the team to contend with. They've got a great schedule, and I think Stanford's a dark horse team. If Stanford's schedule was like Washington, I'd pick Stanford to win the Pac-12. And here's my other statement. We'll get on to the Big 12, Paul. If the Big 12 does not have a football team that is worth a darn on defense, I don't think they should be allowed into the college football playoff. Unless the other conferences screw it up, a one-loss Big 12 team should not be allowed in the college football playoff. The common denominator of a champion is a great defensive football team.
Yeah. Bob Bowlesby on line 1.
That's fine. He can call me all he wants.
Tom Luginbill, many thanks. Great stuff. We'll take a break. Get your reaction to all of that. Many more guests to come. It is only Monday. Back on the program. Let's continue. More of your calls at 855-242-7285. We'll find out more about the Aggies coming up in a few minutes. The athletic director at Mizzou will join us, Pat Forty, on the latest mess in Mississippi. Let's continue right now and check in with Doug in Alabama. Hello, Doug.
How you doing, Paul? I hadn't talked to you in about 3 weeks.
I'm glad to hear from you.
They're talking about quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference. I think you can take Jalen Hurts and put him as one of the top in the country. I think he's going to be that good. I really do. And I don't see any reason for anybody to believe that he's not going to be able to throw the ball downfield, because I think he will. I think
Doug, I agree. I think he's not getting much credit. I thought he played a phenomenal first season. I don't know, other than what people say and what I hear from Tuscaloosa, Brian Dable is very impressed with him and has worked with him, and
yeah,
he doesn't. By the way, he doesn't have to do that much better to be really good.
No, I agree with you.
Glad to hear from you. Thank you very, very much for the call. Zach is in Gainesville. You are next up. What do you say, Zach?
What's going on, Paul? I just, that new recruit that came in from North Carolina, defensive tackle. You never want to say our defense is getting weak, but I feel like Jim McElwain knows how to get them transfers better than anyone can.
Well, I don't know about better than anyone, but he certainly is very good. Millie is up next. What do you say, Millie?
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, 2 points that I'd like to make from Friday. You guys were wondering about the Coke thing that Nick he always has on his dealing. Well, anyway, the thing of it is that Paul Bryant used to have it on his deal, and so I think that's where he got it from, because he.
Well, Paul Bryant used to do two things during his television show, Millie. He would open up his Coca-Cola bottle, and then he would tear open his Golden Flake potato chips. And sometimes, depending on how he was feeling, he might get them open on the first try or maybe the 10th try. The thing with, I don't know the contract. Something tells me that within the contract between the soft drink maker and the university, it stipulates that Coke needs to be right there by Saban's side. I don't know that, but that's my guess.
Okay, and the second thing, that picture that they had of you made up, you look like the Borg from the Star Trek The Next Generation. It looked like they were trying to make you look like that.
Oh, the fine bots? Oh, yeah, that was quite becoming.
Yeah, and the Borg were evil people. I'm surprised that somebody would want to even put you in that category.
It's amazing, Millie, that everyone, not everyone really thinks I'm great. There are some evil people out there like John Hayes.
No, I don't think he's evil. He's a pretty upstanding guy.
Really?
And so's Mark and
John, how did that picture
Randy.
get up there?
What? No, that picture that you guys did, it was well done. It's just that if somebody's trying to make you look like the Borg, I'm not in favor of it at all.
Yeah. The fine bot. We'll have to go back and find this tweet and show it in the next TV only.
Yeah, Millie, it's amazing that like you, I thought everyone loves me and thinks I'm great, but there's one or two people out there how they got off the reservation, I will never know. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Frank in Chicago. You are next up. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, this is Frank.
Glad to have you on, Frank.
I got a question for you, Paul. How in the world does the coaches poll justify putting a team that finished under 500 3 years in a row in the top 25? And, of course, I'm talking about those bums from Austin, Texas.
Well, here is the deal on the coaches poll. It's a poll. It has 50-some-odd coaches or maybe more voting, so it's not like you get 12 people in a room and they coalesce around one idea. It's a couple of dozen individuals, and then it's a tabulation. And I think if Charlie Strong had still been the coach, it wouldn't have been that way, because people did not have as much confidence in him at Texas. They obviously do at USF, but Tom Herman is new. He's the it thing, and therefore he got a lot of votes. I happen to think they're going to be good, too. So count me among
I
your.
just don't know. I mean,
vote,
3 years below 500.
That has nothing to do with what you're projected to be this year, though.
But they sure are using last year's projection for A&M and everybody else.
Well, now that is fair. A lot of times, if the coach is the same, but when you get a reboot, sometimes you will get more energy directed toward an individual. I'm interested to see if the next poll, which comes out, I believe, 2 weeks from yesterday, and that's the more important of the two, that the AP poll mirrors the USA Today poll.
Right. And I like Tom Herman. I think he's a good coach. It's just I just don't know if just him showing up and changing a little bit of the culture is going to translate into a top 25 football team.
I don't. First of all, Frank, it's not that difficult to be a top 25 football team. You get down to 23, 24, 25. You're talking about good to mediocre, not great. So I don't think we're talking about anything more than 8-4, which is where I would have Texas this year, which is an improvement over last year, though.
Yeah, what were they, 5-7?
Yeah, it wasn't only that. It was that law. It was some of the inexplicable losses, especially the very last one to Kansas. Thank you for the call. Do appreciate it. Nick in Fayetteville is calling next. What do you say, Nick?
How do you think Arkansas will do this year in football?
Good. Maybe not great, but good enough. I think 8-4 is realistic. What about you?
Somewhere between 6 and 8 wins.
Well, that's always the challenge.
You think we'll be better than what we were last year?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a better team than last year. I think Austin Allen is going to be a better quarterback, and I'm hoping that in the offseason, Coach Bielema and Austin Allen, he told us a few weeks ago that they've really buckled down and know where they made mistakes last year. All they have to do is turn a couple of games around. If they turned the A&M game around, which they could, that was, I think, an overtime loss last year. They had a big lead on Missouri and let that get away. That's 2 wins. So, I mean, if they turn those 2 around, they have 9 wins. That's a good season. That it's really it's a small margin. I really believe. Clint is up next in Kansas. Kansas, how are you?
Hey, Paul, how you doing today?
Okay, Clint.
Hey, I was going to talk about the Alabama running backs and then Jalen Hurts. I know you and Tom were talking about that. But I don't think Jalen's going to have very much problems with stretching the field this year because most teams are probably still going to continue to try to stack the box. And if you get one-on-one coverage with one of the best wide receivers in the country, Calvin Ridley, and then you got Robert Foster and Jared Jeudy, the true freshman, it's still going to have plenty of opportunity for Jalen to stretch the field. And, Bo Scarborough was turning it on big time towards the end of the year before he got injured in the national title game. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be off to a great start. I don't think he's going to have very much problem stretching the field like a lot of media is saying that he still might have an issue.
Agree. Well said. And thank you very, very much. You heard Millie mention the tweet we put up on the screen the other day. The fine bot. If I was an ophthalmologist, that's what I would look like. Thank you. Thank you, Mizzou Cast Podcast. Kind of a boring name, but anyway, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Glad you're with us. 855-242-7285. And Steve is up next in West Virginia. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Paul. How are you?
We are doing great.
You have a good weekend?
Sure did. Thank you.
Well, that's great. The reason I'm calling is I just listened to Tom Luginbill talk and everything, and I have a lot of respect for him. But all I've heard for the last month is all these people saying Jalen Hurts needs to improve his downfield throwing, and everybody's rating J.C. Barrett as a Heisman Trophy candidate who can't throw the ball more than 8 yards down the field. So what is going on with that?
Well, what's going on with that is that we end up picking up narratives from the year before, and we regurgitate them, we repeat them, we reiterate them until we're proven otherwise. And I think like you, I mean, I'm watching Jalen Hurts in the first game to see if he's any different. I mean, he had some good throws last year. A lot of what he ended up doing was dictated by Lane Kiffin.
Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, and this is the thing, and I've said all along, I'm a West Virginia guy. The Big 12 is not that great of a conference compared to the other conferences, but you can't make that statement if they have an undefeated team or a one-loss team that they can't make the playoffs. That's
no, I mean, obviously Luginbill had gone to hot take school on the way in here today.
Yes. Well, thank you for taking my call, and have a good show.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've made some outrageous statements, not this week, but it's only Monday. But, yeah, you can't just say somebody can't go because they're in a league. I'm not a big fan of the Big 12, but if Oklahoma's undefeated and has a bad defense, they're going. Because that means they will have won against Oklahoma State, which is a really good team, Texas, which could be a really good team, and at Ohio State. Nobody's keeping them home, Tom. Thank you for the call. 855-242-7285. That is our number. Let's continue with more phone calls here. And Mike is up next in Georgia. What do you say, Mike?
How's it going, Paul?
Quite well, thank you.
I want to talk about I'm a Gators fan and how Coach Mack is recruiting. Over the weekend, well, let's say in the last 2 weeks, we had under 7 or 8 recruits, and today,
he's on a roll right now, the best roll of his career at Florida.
Exactly. I mean, we got 17 commits, and an interview he did this morning, or talking to a press guy, he said, we've met every position that we need, and I just don't think my man's getting enough.
Well, listen, Mike, I will tell you, though, all the great recruiting in July is not going to matter if you can't win during the fall. But he has some momentum. We all agree on that. Coach B is in Little Rock. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing very well. Yourself?
We are doing great.
Hope everything's going good with you. I got one comment. The guy called in talking about the Hogs a few minutes ago. I want to watch some scrimmage on Saturday, pardon me. They still can't stop anybody. They're going to be pretty good on offense, but it's going to be, same old thing on defense.
Do you see anything on the defensive side that's different?
Well, the fact that they lined up in a 3-4 instead of a 4-3, but they still don't have enough speed over there to play.
Well, that's been the big conversation all during the offseason, that was going to cure the ills.
Well, you don't cure the ill unless you've got some kids that can run faster than 4.8 on the defensive side, and they've got several of those. Secondary is not as bad as it was. I think one safety is a pretty good little player. I think they will have a heck of a time trying to play with TCU in that first one.
Yeah, that's a tough game.
Yes, it is, and a lot of people are kind of ignoring it. I don't see 7 wins. More power to them if they can, but I try to be realistic about what I see.
Now, let me ask you. I mean, you are a coach, so you know more than I. When you sit and watch a scrimmage, what are you looking for?
Technique.
Okay.
I look, certainly you look for what kind of athletes are out there, but, that's kind of deceptive since they're going against each other. But looking at technique, and you can look at speed, you look at the overall scheme of things and what they're trying to do and how they're blocking it up front and so forth. You never watch the football. That's you watch what's going on up front.
Well, I'll be anxious to see. I don't think we'll know much in the first game, but game 2 we'll know pretty much everything, won't we?
I think we'll know a lot right then. And of course, I wish them good luck. But again,
sure.
You got to have people. Coach,
hey, let me ask you, just for those of us who are technique challenged, explain why they are making the switch on defense.
Well, like a lot of people right now, it's so difficult to find 4 down linemen. That's really a premium to find 4. Alabama obviously has more than anybody else, but it's hard to find 4 people that can play down with their hand on the ground all the time on the defensive side. And you can go to a few more athletes, quote unquote, when you go to a 3-4 and play more outside linebackers rather than defensive end, defensive tackle types. It's hard to find those guys who are, today 6'5", 300 pounds that can run a 4.5. You just don't see a whole lot of those or 4-6.
And where on the 4? I mean, how much can you disguise from a? I mean, you can't run obviously away from talent, but I'm speaking specifically about a school like Arkansas, where the depth is not as good.
I think you've got to be able to play a lot of games up front, a lot of twists. I think you got to be able to stunt. You got to blitz at the right time. You got to bring people off the edge. You got to do things that make it difficult for an offensive line group to scheme against you. You know, if they can just come out there and say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and you're just sitting in the same spot all the time, you're in a world of trouble. So I think you've got to move people around. You've got to play people in two gaps more than you would like to, perhaps. So I think that's the only chance they have.
Well, that's not optimistic. I'll tell you. Well, thank you very much. Will you see any more scrimmages before camp ends?
I'll try to get up for the next one. I think it's next Friday. I think I'm gonna try to get up. I'm not doing. That's the advantage of being retired. Just get in your car and go. So.
Well, listen. I really appreciate it because we have so many listeners in Arkansas, and that's valuable information what you're sharing with us.
Well, very good. Thank you for taking my call. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Have a good day, brother.
You got it, bud. Coach B, moving to the 3-4, talking about Arkansas, what difference will it make? Anyway, I mentioned that Brent Zwerneman will join us in a couple of moments. We'll also talk to the athletic director at Mizzou, Jim Sturck. He has done quite a job turning that at one time embattled athletic department around. We have plenty to go here, 1 hour in on a Monday.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Check out ESPN Films' newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
Give me back. The second half of the first half of the show is here. Hour number 2. We have 3 more to go after that, and we will talk to the athletic director at Missouri later in the program, maybe later this hour. Brent Zwerneman covers the Texas A&M Aggies for the Houston Chronicle. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to talk to Brent. Brent, good afternoon. And, man, last time we talked to you, Kevin Sumlin was on fire. Today he may be getting fired. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. I was going to say, in the last time you talked to the athletic director from Texas A&M, it's in all of the scrambling. So I perked up when you said you were about to talk to an AD again. Glad it's
No.
Missouri and not Scott Woodward.
Scott has not returned our call since we saw him on the beach.
Oh, we have something in common then. Yeah.
Well, let's I say that jokingly. We have not called him because there's nothing more I think he can say. But let's start there. He said what he did in late May. People are still talking about that statement. Has much been said about, not that it matters, but has much been said or anything been said about Kevin Sumlin's status since that moment?
Not really. And, you said you were joking. Well, I wasn't joking. He's gone tight-lipped since then. I think he said what he wanted to say at that point and then said, okay, we're gonna leave it there. And the sense I get from Kevin Sumlin since that time, and really in the past, really since January, is that I don't know that I've ever seen him this laser-focused in on the task at hand. I'll put it that way. And, both on the recruiting trail and going about his business of spring drills and now camp as well. So sparked a fire on that front. I'll put it that way, because Kevin Sumlin really, really seems zeroed in at this point.
And let's talk about one of those subjects that he is going to be zeroed in on, and that is the quarterback situation. What's going to happen?
It's looking like it's going to be Nick Starkel, but if you had asked me this, 5 years ago at this time, I would have told you Jamil Showers over Johnny Manziel. So been wrong before. And but Starkel looks like he's out in front of those other guys, maybe even by a good margin. You know what you're getting with Jake Hubenak. Now, if you trotted him out there against UCLA on a Sunday night on September 3rd on national TV, you know he's taken a college snap. He's been there before. He started the bowl game for the Aggies against Louisville. So he's been out there. So Nick Starkel, never taken a snap. Kellen Mond, never taken a snap. The thing about Starkel, he's been in the program now for a year and a half, and just watching him in practice, I mean, he throws a really pretty pass. I like his mental makeup. He's kind of a character. He's got a good sense of humor, but he knows when to get squared away as well. So right now it's looking like it's going to be Starkel, but that could change in a few weeks as well. But I wouldn't think so.
Let's get a little backstory on him. You started you talked about how long he's been around. What do we know about him?
Yeah, he was a guy who I believe he was an Oklahoma State pledge, and then when Kyler Murray and Kyle Allen transferred, then he got on the Aggies' radar and vice versa. And an Elite 11 guy and tall, rangy, came to A&M really skinny, and has filled out in that time since, and has been in this program now for a while, you know. And he was an early enrollee, so it's not like even though he's listed as a freshman, it's almost like he's a veteran in the program. So a guy you would probably say was underrated out of high school. I know that Oklahoma State really wanted him, and he ended up at A&M when those two guys left with the idea that he would be now getting this opportunity.
Talking to Brent Zerneman. Brent, let's look ahead. Let's look at the season, because this is a really critical year for someone. Everyone knows that. Begins where it began last year, at least against the same team, UCLA, but a much different location. It was a narrow overtime call last year. Let's talk about the schedule beginning at UCLA, then the Arkansas game 4 weeks later or 3 weeks later in Jerry's World, South Carolina, Alabama. Not a terrible schedule, well, unless you consider Alabama an easy game. And then the second part at Florida, Mississippi State, Auburn, New Mexico, at Ole Miss, and at LSU. You can argue it's not a bad schedule, and then you can argue that watch out if things don't get off to a good start.
Right, and my argument would be it's maybe even a little tougher than what it's been in the past. I mean, you're always playing the SEC West schedule, of course, but then, as you pointed out, you open at UCLA this year. Well, it took overtime with Myles Garrett at Kyle Field for the Aggies to beat UCLA last season. So then you say, okay, that's shaping up as a tough one with some of the talent. Well, both teams have lost plenty of talent, but the Aggies, you know, obviously on defense as well. And then the one you say, okay, their SEC East opponent this year outside of South Carolina is at Florida. So, you know, in years past, they had Tennessee here last year. They've been at Vanderbilt. So that's their toughest SEC East opponent to date, I would say, you know, being at Florida in mid-October. So in that sense, in addition to playing the SEC West schedule, you have those two games as well. So that's why I would say it shapes up as a little tougher than maybe even last year.
Brent, what we've seen the projections by the media. I mean, what do you hear just talking to the rank and file fans? I mean, what do they expect? And then there's obviously a question after that.
In terms of what do they expect from a record?
One loss record, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm the feel I get and what I'm predicted right now, I'm coming up with 7 wins, you know, and then say, okay, you get to 8 wins again, maybe with the bowl game, but 7-5. And I know that, you know, a lot of my friends here, I live in Bryan College Station, and a lot of them are season ticket holders. Some have backed out of their pledges. There was a group of 16 at one point that is now down to about 6 or 8. My buddy was telling me the other day, you know, just from the idea of saying, you know, until they get it going, until they're competing for SEC West titles, they're not coming back. So there's definitely that kind of sense of they charge so much for tickets, they spend $500 million on Kyle Field, they're not competing for titles. But then Kevin Sumlin is putting together a heck of a recruiting class this year. I think it might shape up as his best yet. And that goes back to what I was talking about with that laser focus and kind of a renewed sense of urgency. So then I think fans are also looking at that and saying, okay, if they get to 8 wins this year, then maybe he does deserve another chance at that point. You know, I think it's a real interesting way. Obviously they can't have the November swoon again, and that's going to be a big part of it. I asked Kevin Sumlin, how do you not screw up your starts, because he's had strong starts when you're trying to remedy the back end of the schedule, and he said that's kind of a tricky proposition. That's part of it.
Brent, how critical is that first game? And I ask it because it's even though it's a Sunday night, it will resonate and reverberate and be digested for weeks, if not longer, especially until the next major game. How big a game is it on the road?
It's huge based on everything we've talked about. And and UCLA coming here into College Station last year and pushing it to overtime, and of course they're going to have to match up with Josh Rosen, and A&M's defense has taken some big hits. Losing Myles Garrett, Deshaun Hall at end, to the NFL, and a lot of question marks on that side of the ball. So huge because, as you pointed out, then you have Nicholls State, Louisiana Lafayette at home after that, Arkansas after that to open up SEC play. So yeah, there will be a few weeks there to digest and dissect what happened in Pasadena that day. So I would say it's really, really big for Kevin Sumlin's future is what it comes down to.
And Brent, listen, you're a good reporter. You're not one just trying to make headlines. You said 7-5. You've obviously given it a lot of thought. I'll let you answer. The 5 losses would be?
Let me look at that real quick. I'd say Florida, Alabama. Neither one of these teams has proven when they play Auburn that they can win on at home. So I'm going to go ahead and say Auburn until they show me otherwise. LSU and then UCLA. Is that 5?
Yeah, that's 5.
I was never very good at math, but there you go.
That would include a win over Arkansas. So,
it would, because based on what I said against playing Auburn, until Brett Bielema in Arkansas shows they can beat Kevin Sumlin, I'm not going to believe it till I see it.
So you mentioned a bowl game, and I'm not trying to answer for anyone other than myself, but I have a hard time believing, Brent, this is just an opinion here, that if Kevin Sumlin ends the regular season with a loss to LSU at 7-5, that he's going to be part of a bowl trip.
I don't know. I think it's how you get. Now, I would have said the same thing a month ago, and it does just it seems like things are still like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's look at this recruiting class. And I know you can't judge a coach's future on a recruiting class and so forth, but it does seem like there's kind of a wait-and-see approach to see how they get maybe to those 7 or 8 wins. And if he gets to 9 wins, I think he's safe. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So, yeah, you would think probably at 7-5 he wouldn't be coaching in a bowl game. But I've certainly seen stranger things around here as well.
Well done, Brent. Many thanks. Good to have you on.
Okay. You bet, Paul. Thank you.
Great. Good, interesting stuff there. And again, things can change. Aggies recruiting well, but losing those games, man, hard for me to juxtapose that with what Scott Woodward said 3 months ago. We will take a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. We'll talk to the athletic director at Missouri. He is probably not facing questions like that about his coach. We'll take a break. You're back with us. Appreciate it. Let's continue with more phone calls at 855-242-7285. We talk to Peter next in L.A. Hey, Peter. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. Hey, listen, it's sort of relevant to what you were just speaking with the AD over at Texas A&M, but I watched a Big Ten network program. They're doing a tour where they're going from school to school. They did Ohio State on Saturday. And Greg Schiano, I think, is a great coach, would be a great candidate, either for Texas A&M or actually even better for Tennessee. Wanted to get your impression on that. And one thing that he said when they asked him, he was the defensive coordinator for those 1999, 2001 Miami teams. And he said that, and of course, he also was a head coach in the NFL for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He said that Ohio State's defensive line is the best, has more talent than any unit he's ever had. At any rate, what's your impression of that?
Yeah, I've heard that statement. I have to go back and look at that. Look at Schiano's team from a couple of years ago. But that would I know this, and so do you, that they have recruited exceptionally well up there. So this may be the fruits of all that hard work.
Yeah, Paul, I remember those old Miami teams and just how almost ungodly they were. I mean, they had first round after first round after first round, and they come back and replace somebody great with like Sean Taylor or something. And then, that was a pretty amazing statement that caught my eye. But what do you think about him as a possible coach for, I'm thinking Tennessee?
Greg Schiano?
Yeah.
I don't know about Tennessee, but I do think Greg Schiano is a really good coach. And it wasn't long ago when he was on everyone's list. He made a mistake. He's back. And the Tennessee situation is impossible to read. The athletic director over the weekend, John Curry, laughed off speculation that Butch Jones is on the hot seat. And I'm of the opinion that he may not be in as much trouble as some of the speculation has.
How about Texas A&M?
Well, I think I don't think that's a mystery. I think someone's on extremely shaky ground, and if he does not have what I would call a big season, he won't be around much longer.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. It's a hell of a schedule they've got.
Yeah, it really is, and I tell you why. Sometimes the first game you can survive. I think if he loses the first game, you're going to start hearing grumbling and groaning and more stories like we heard from Zorneman about lack of support. And should he then drop another game or two, and Arkansas coming in there, Alabama, Florida, that's a if that team is not good, it could be over with very quickly if they're not good.
Yeah. I don't think they will be, but that's just
I'm not sure why I believe they will be either. Thanks for the call. I really do appreciate it. Let's move along and check in with Eddie in Austin. Good afternoon, Eddie.
Hey, what's going on, Paul? How are you, man?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Hey, I just had a quick question. I just want to know, I'm an LSU fan, and I just want to know how you think the new offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, is going to do in that offense.
I'll tell you what, Eddie, if he is half as good as predicted, he's going to be unbelievable. I've never heard an offensive coordinator with as much energy associated with his hire and as many people high on him as I've heard for Matt Canada. Do appreciate the call very much. We have a lot to do here the next couple hours, including a conversation with Jim Sturk. He is the athletic director at the University of Missouri. Came into a very difficult situation. Some people thought hopeless. He has turned the direction of that school around. The athletic department's perception has changed. He is raising money, and we will talk to him coming up here in a moment. And we welcome you back. Glad you are here. It's been a busy program, and we really look forward to welcoming our next guest. Jim Sturk is the athletic director at the University of Missouri. I think I'm right about this, about to celebrate his first anniversary on the job. Jim, thanks so much, and I'm sure you're wondering if it's been a year or maybe 5 times longer than that, but we thank you for being here. Congratulations.
Thanks, Paul. It's actually seems like a lot shorter. It seems like a few months, but it's really flown by, and a lot of good momentum that we have going on, and I'm really excited about the upcoming year.
Jim, you inherited a very well-respected athletic director who happened to be caught up, like a lot of people on that campus, in some very difficult circumstances. You obviously embraced the job. You came in, but it hasn't been easy. I'm really interested in getting your thoughts on what this job, what the challenge of it has been like, and certainly so many other questions to follow up on from there.
Sure. One, I felt like it was a place that could have great success, has had great success, and we could, if I could could stabilize and move forward, I think I thought a lot of good things could happen. And we actually had one of our best years overall athletically. We had 16 of our 20 programs made it to postseason play, and had a great fundraising year. So support there from a lot of different folks. And the first 6 months it was getting a feel for what had happened and where we needed to go. But I think we're hitting stride now, and I'm really, really excited about the upcoming year.
And certainly the second year for Coach Odom, we had the opportunity to meet again. We got to know him briefly, Conzo Martin, the new basketball coach, and really impressed with him. I know that was certainly you have many personnel decisions as an athletic director, but certainly that has been one of the most publicized. Talk about Conzo for a second, and the image and the perception of that program has changed literally overnight.
Yeah, it's the snowball is really getting bigger, and it really started with him and being able to secure him and his interest in coming back home, as he called it. He grew up in St. Louis and then moved across the river to East St. Louis, but he was a native Missourian, had worked at Missouri State and done a great job there, then moved on to Tennessee and Cal, and so he was someone that I identified early, that someone that could make a really positive impact. And then just what happened with the Porters and with Michael and Michael Sr., Michael Jr., the Robin Pinchton, our women's basketball coaches, their aunt, and she kept telling me that they wanted to come back to Missouri. And so if everything worked out right, that this thing could really, really take off. And I think we've gone from recruiting class of 250 to fifth in the country. So it's a really a fun thing to see the excitement grow about that. And then also Barry's second year, as you mentioned, and he's really doing a great job, and we're excited about the fall as well.
And certainly you alluded to fundraising, and we can act like it doesn't matter, but it does. It's not easy, especially today or in any time for that matter. But you've been around, and I'm sure there are a lot of answers for being successful here, hard work being one of them, but you've changed a lot of things, perceptions about the program. Take us through the last year, going out, meeting great Missouri fans all over not only that state and Kansas, but around the country.
Well, I think you have an advantage when you're the flagship, and I had been at a land-grant institution before at Washington State University, so I knew that in every county of the state you have extension councils, and we've been able to engage with them and reach out to all the 114 counties in the state and St. Louis and Kansas City, and so a lot of positive things to build upon. So and a lot of groundwork had been done. So for me, I think it was the right time, opportunity. We had a project that needed to get started and completed, and it would really help not only football but the rest of our programs as well, as freeing up space and where football currently is housed and works out. And so it was something that I think resonated with our alums and donors, and I think it's really been positive. We're going before the board later this month and getting final approval on the budget and moving forward.
It's interesting because a lot of us don't really understand what goes into that. Certainly a successful program helps, I'm sure, but when you're out with graduates, alums, boosters, what type of message do you convey, and what do you hear back from them?
So from my standpoint, I really try to focus that our main goal is to create one of the best student-athlete experiences in the country, and that takes an academic success, athletic success, and their personal development, and to have that success on all fronts needs support. And at the SEC, we're fortunate enough to get enough support externally so that the university really we don't take away from any resources of the institution. And so that when they understand that, and they understand who we're competing against, the Alabamas and the Auburns and the A&Ms of the world, they take pride in the university. They want the university to have success overall. And so you convey that message, tell them what you'd like to do, and hopefully that need matches their desire to support.
We're chatting with Jim Sturck, the athletic director at the University of Missouri. Certainly, basketball is huge out there. You mentioned the success in other sports. Football is also very important. And as we get ready for another football season, I'm curious your thoughts. Barry Odom certainly won a big game at the end of last year, which I think always helps fans become energized. Your thoughts on Barry and his program right now as he enters year 2?
I think, Barry took it over and very successful, Gary Pinkel, but the program was a little bit down, and he brought us through a kind of a tough period, but I saw the makings of a great team and a great leader, the way he led the team, and they finished strong. They won 2 out of the 3 in the SEC to finish the season, and I think he's really been able to focus on getting back to football as opposed to trying to build the whole program and all of those parts around it. And so he's focusing on being a football coach and leading his team and leading his staff, and I think that'll really help. I think a second year of Josh Heupel and having an offense that was very successful last year, the second year, I think you can make a big jump with that and having a veteran quarterback that runs that kind of offense. So I think those are a couple of the things, and obviously having 10 of 11 starters back on offense helps out a lot, and then Barry knowing what he wants to do defensively and the personnel, and I think these student athletes are focused. They've worked very hard, just like everyone across the country, but they're focusing on winning their division, and that's what the goal should be, and winning a title. So I'm excited about watching them compete, and there'll be bumps along the way, but I think they have great leadership within the program and with Barry and his staff, so I'm excited about that.
First game against Missouri State. We'll have it here on the SEC Network. Jim, I'm curious about your philosophy on scheduling. A lot of what you have, you inherited, but where does Missouri go next, or what is currently going on that at least you can discuss?
Yeah, so it's amazing. Football gets out there quite a ways, and we're scheduling games in 23 and 24, and I did inherit this one, but I think it's one where the SEC requires at least one Power 5 opponent in the non-conference schedule, and I think that's appropriate. And with this league, you don't need much more than that as far as Power 5 opponents, but I think you're looking for a balance of teams that we do want to have 7 games. We at times in the past, and I want to do it in the future, of playing a game in St. Louis, playing one in Kansas City, and so we're looking to do that and trying to balance all of that.
And we didn't mention the basketball tournament heading to the state of Missouri. I'm sure that's a great sense of pride as well in Columbia.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be great to host it in St. Louis, and I know the Sports Commission is very excited, and the city's very excited, and with the renewed basketball interest, I think that'll really not only add to the bragging rights the game that we have in St. Louis against Illinois, but then the tournament. We know that the fans of Kentucky and others attend in strong force, but I think that we'll have a great crowd there as well.
Jim, many thanks. Congratulations on a tremendous start from every aspect, including fundraising. We look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
You bet. And I think we will. Jim Sturck, the athletic director at the University of Missouri. Look forward to seeing him when we hopefully get to Columbia during our fall travels. We'll take a break. 855-242-7285. More to come after this. Continue with more phone calls at 855-242-7285. Dylan in Gainesville, good afternoon.
How you doing?
Hey there.
I'm doing good. I was just wondering, Gainesville, Florida, the Gators, how do you feel about the Gators going into the season, their ranking, and where they're going to end up?
Yeah, I like the Gators by a hair to win the SEC East. I think they're looking at a pretty good season. I really believe right now, and again, I say that 4 weeks out, that they're going to beat Michigan That's barring injuries and understanding better maybe the week of the game who will be at the quarterback position. But I think the schedule is good. Having LSU come to your place is always nice. Tennessee as well. I mean, the three biggest games on the regular, the four biggest games on this, well, four of the five biggest games on the schedule are in Gainesville. Michigan being neutral site, Florida State, Tennessee, LSU being at home, and Georgia being in Jacksonville. That's a great schedule.
Yeah, A&M as well.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure A&M's quite in the upper division, but the schedule is critical, and I know fans get sick and tired of hearing us talking March, April, May about the schedule. But look at LSU's schedule. It's tough. You got, five road games in the SEC, including Florida and Tennessee. That's a tough schedule. Now, one of those games is self-inflicted by the athletic director, Joe Oliva, but the rest of them are just the way it works. So. You got a sneaky tough game at the beginning against BYU. You go on the road to Mississippi State. I think that's a dangerous game. You got the bottom of the barrel of Syracuse from the ACC. Troy's probably a tougher game than Syracuse. And then you're at Florida, Auburn at home. That's probably the biggest home game of the year. And then you're at Alabama. I mean, there's nowhere to go with that schedule. Thank you for the call. I do appreciate it. Bob is next.
Hello.
Hello, Bob.
Past. How you doing, Paul?
Really good.
Hadn't been watching your show lately because it got to be more of a Alabama sports network with you. But I'm sure you won't lose any sleep over that. I know you've been very, very critical of Butch Jones. Exactly why are you?
Bob, I have to be honest with you. I got totally lost in your question. What was the question again?
The question was, you've been very critical of Butch Jones. Okay, I'm not real crazy about him, but why are you down on him?
John, could you help me? I'm trying to remember. You've been real critical of Butch Jones.
No, you have been critical of Butch.
And then you said what?
I said I'm not crazy about him.
Okay, so you've been critical. I'm not crazy about him. And then the actual question was?
The actual question is, how many times do you have to hear it? I mean, the question is, why are you so down on him, and why?
Well, first of all, I'm not down on him. Being critical and down on someone are two different things. I've had good things to say about Coach Jones, and I've had difficult things to say because I really don't know which way it's going. I hope he succeeds. I really do. I do think this is an important year. I don't think it's a do or die year unless the bottom falls out. But thanks for the call. And I mean, if you ever ask a question like that, please slap yourself, will you?
Absolutely. I mean, slap yourself and slap anybody standing close to you because they didn't slap you first. What? I mean, you're critical. He's critical, and he wants to know why you're more critical.
I'm critical.
Why didn't he just tell us?
He's not crazy.
Yeah, why didn't he just tell us why he wasn't crazy about him? He would have answered his own question. Paul, how many times? What do you think about Florida? What do you think about Georgia? What do you think about Crimson Tide? You think we can lose 3 games and get the national championship?
Well, we're in that phase now where there's just nothing left to say. So it's, what do you think?
And do these people listen to this show? Your opinion about Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Mississippi State, none of that has changed in 6 weeks. You are sitting right where you were, and do these people listen? The radio is something.
Well,
that
fella a minute ago doesn't listen anymore because just got tired of the show.
You know, if you're listening to the radio, that requires ears, not eyes. Don't have to smell it. Don't have to touch it. Just listen, people. Listen and comprehend. If you're watching TV, you can kind of look at it. But you still got to listen, and your opinions, my opinions, and even the people who aren't crazy about their coaches' opinions, haven't changed, but they're trying to find some magic dust, some monkey dust somewhere to make them feel better about themselves. My goodness. Paul, sometimes I listen to this show, and I think that all these callers ought to be guest stars on Sharknado 6.
Is that already back on the tube? Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Man, bringing some heat. Let's continue. More phone calls here. And Gary is up next. What do you say, Gary?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. You made me best man at you and Millie's wedding a couple of months ago.
Thank you for that, by the way. I don't know if you got the groomsmen presents, but I did send them out.
Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to bring Eddie Jackson with me because I don't think he ever got mentioned enough with the Crimson Tide. I think if he had played in the Clemson game, I believe they would have won. That's how good.
Well,
Eddie Jackson was.
he was such a great player on two levels. He was a great punt returner. He could change a game in 2 seconds. And,
just turned it around.
Yeah, defensively he played a big. Yeah, it's a really good point. But unfortunately, Gary, I'm not every school. But Alabama loses a player like him or Bo Scarborough in the fight, and we all obsess over it. But Alabama still has more talent than everybody else.
Yeah, always.
Alabama lost a lot from him from a leadership standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I watched every minute of every game of Alabama when they play, and Eddie Jackson just seems like his name just doesn't get mentioned like the other players. And, man, he was just great. I thought he just made the team. I mean, he made Alabama a much better team.
He did. Well, listen, I appreciate you mentioning him. I hope he's doing well. I have not seen Eddie in a while. Morgan is calling next. Morgan, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, P-Town. First complaint, fake news media, that USA Today. Oh, my Lord. But let me ask you this, Paul, for real. If Alabama and Auburn go to the Iron Bowl, both undefeated, tight ball game, that knocks out the ACC. Could you not see Alabama and Auburn both going if it's a close game?
Well, I mean, you need to tell me more. Are you suggesting they're both undefeated, and what about the ACC?
Both undefeated. It's a close ball game.
Okay.
Say Alabama beats Auburn. Auburn's only loss is to Alabama. Could you see both teams making it? Do you think they would let something like that happen?
Yeah, I don't think they have a predisposition. So that would mean this, and you've already thought about it. That would mean Alabama has a win over Florida State, and Auburn has a win at Clemson.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be. I would think that would be I would agree with you on that. Because that would be the two best teams theoretically in the ACC. The SEC would have wins over. And by the way, then that means Florida State would have a win over Clemson at Clemson, but also a win over Florida at Florida. So it's hard to say because Auburn would be sitting home on championship weekend, but they would have a chance. Yes.
Well, I heard you say the other day that, you hadn't been hearing from the Tide fans, and I got my Tide pride, don't get me wrong, but I got a healthy fear of Auburn this year. I do.
I think you have every right to be. I think Auburn is a legitimate team.
Me too. And with that, I'll let you answer the next one, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, there's no getting around it. Let's check in with Bruce next. What do you say, Bruce?
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
We are doing great, thank you.
That's great, yes, sir. I hadn't. It's first time caller, and gentleman asked a question right before I called, but I was mainly wanting to know what you thought about after we beat Florida State. What do you think about them playing us again in the final?
Well, I think that certainly is a possibility.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know what Florida State's schedule is, but
well, they have to go to Clemson. They have to go to Florida, so they have a couple of pretty tough games.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I just wanted to say
Play Miami.
That's true. Miami's a great team. Yes, sir. Well, all righty, Paul. I'll let you go. And,
well, Bruce, it was a pleasure. Thank you. Glad to hear from all of you. We will continue. We had Jim Sturk on and Tom Luginbill, Brent Swarneman, Pat Forty talking about the latest from Ole Miss. Ross Bjork will join us Thursday.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.